I'm a member of a community group in Palmer Creek, which is about 4 miles west of Healdsburg. And I was particularly interested in knowing how your organization might work with what we're doing, which is citizens organized to prepare for emergencies, COPE, and whether that's COPE is underneath Fire Safe Sonoma or not.
No, we're aware of COPE. We think it's a great program. And I know your neighborhood. I have done presentations out there before. So I'm really glad you guys are organized. It's an area with a lot of risk. And COPE is a great place to start. So we're happy to work with you in any way we can, along with the local fire. Whenever I do anything for Fire Safe Sonoma, I always like to make sure that I have these guys in the room, CAL FIRE, as well as whoever your local fire department is. So yeah, we're happy to help. Maybe we can do a community wildfire protection plan at some point.
Yeah, and I had a question for you as well. I understand from talking to Marshall Turbeville that there's some thought about opening up ridgeways so that heavy equipment can get in there and clear, or maybe make ridges more defensible in the event of a fire. Do you know how that would work, or whether there's funding available to do it, or what the issues are in terms of getting permission from the homeowners?
Couple different layers there. First and foremost, I have a prevention background. I came from suppression way back when, but the bulk of my career is prevention. So to me, if it's predictable, it's preventable. And what we can do on the front side, fighting wildland fires is very expensive. So if we spend some money on the front side, maybe we can save millions of dollars on the back side. So one of the things that I'm doing is tasking the division chiefs and their respective battalion chiefs across the unit to look at fire history, the ignitions we have, homeowners groups that we have, the population density, and existing road beds that we can work off of to be able to create those boxes to be able to allow us to contain a fire in a specific area or get resources in a timely fashion. So Battalion Chief Mark Gradick is your local battalion chief. He and Chief Turbeville share responsibility for overseeing the North County, depending on who's on duty, but Chief Gradick would be your point of contact to have that discussion, and he'd be happy to come out and take a look at your property. And then once that happens, if it's a multi-landowner project, if it's going across multiple parcels and land ownership, then it would be getting the neighbors together and entering into an agreement with CAL FIRE to be able to put a bulldozer in there or utilize hand crews or engine companies to mechanically modify that fuel on the road or the ridge top.
Great. Okay, back microphone.
Yes, Bob Sieben. My goal is, well, first of all, the wildfire prevention funding is totally devastated. There's a solution to this. The solution is that the homeowner steps up to the plate and manages their own property, frees up the firefighters to do what they're supposed to do, which is suppression. I'm trying to do this on a national level because I want to interrupt by saying I'm offering my book in the back for free. There are about 500 copies, and it's about a lot of these things I've heard Steve Quarles talk many times and so forth. It's about simple things you can do that don't cost a lot of money, and you could do it this weekend and save your house. And in the course of that also you can free up the firefighters to do what they're best able to do. This book I wrote because I was chair of the Wildfire Prevention District in Oakland for 3 terms during the 10 years, and our greatest failing was education. I've gone to many national meetings and so forth. The recurring problem is, how do you get the homeowner involved? No one has been able to do this satisfactorily. So it's extremely important. The people in this room are the exception. The speakers are fantastic, but we've got to get the homeowners to contribute. And my goal is that the wildfire prevention will be fully funded without federal funds by the homeowners just doing their own share to do this. If one homeowner, for example, takes these kinds of steps, then his house, the odds improve that it'll survive. If a group of homeowners do it, you've got a fire break, and it's exponentially of value. If you make your area fire safe, there are more firefighters to come when the next Oakland storm comes. If I make my area fire safe, which I've been working on for 23 years, it makes more firefighters available to help you. We have got to do this. This is the solution.
Thank you very much, sir.
You guys want to comment on anything? Thanks a lot. Okay, done.
It seems to me that one of the holes in this discussion are the insurance companies. The insurance companies have a huge stake in this process. They're not here. PG&E is not here. The banks that hold the mortgages are not here. Somehow we need to figure out a way to get them engaged. The first beneficiary of fire-safe homes are going to be the insurance companies.
I'd also like to offer a public education tool. This symposium has been an excellent example of public education, but we need to bring communities together to safeguard their homes. And what I'm offering is a film, Wilder Than Wild. We began it with the Rim Fire. We went back into production to cover the wine country wildfires. It premiered at the Sonoma International Film Festival. And what we're doing is community screenings to get people in the room to become aware that we have a new kind of wildfire that's more intense, more destructive, and to consider the very measures that we're thinking about here. For example, we have a screening a week from Saturday at the Rincon Valley Public Library in Santa Rosa at 4 o'clock. But in the film are CAL FIRE Chief Pimlott, Mary Nicholls, head of the Air Resources Board in California, Kelly Martin, is the Chief of Fire and Aviation in Yosemite, Malcolm North, who's our scientist, who's a colleague of a number of Scott Stevens and Hugh Safford. And the model for this kind of screening, we're going to test in Berkeley on May 21st. Follow the screening with a panel with a public official, in this case, a council member. Scott Stevens will be there, and also a Berkeley firefighter who is a first responder to the wine country wildfires. So I invite you to come to the screening in Rincon Valley Public Library a week from Saturday, but also to host screenings to bring your community together. You can do that through our website, wilderthanwildfilm.org, or you can see me, I'll give you a card.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, I think it's interesting to see the lineup of comments after this this discussion. I think that this actually represents a kind of a pivot point in the conversation altogether. I totally appreciate the science and the academic kind of presentations made the next couple of days, but I think the next frontier really is getting the homeowners involved and actually organizing. Just to give you a little bit of news from Lake County, where we're kind of 2 years down the road. Right after the fires up on Cobb Mountain, Middletown, South Lake County, one of the things that we discovered is there's a mechanism in California called the Municipal Advisory Councils. And this is something that even after decades in local government, I didn't realize your Board of Supervisors can, by simple resolution, take a crayon, pencil, and identify within your unincorporated area a Municipal Advisory Council area. We did this in Cobb. We established the Cobb Area Council right after the Valley Fire, and initially started to organize on rebuild, recovery, disaster case management, all those kind of immediate post-fire issues. But now we're really morphing into developing fire-safe communities. We just a couple weeks ago, based on 2 years of organizing, we had a fire-safe meeting which had 200 neighbors from the Cobb area getting together. We've got our first Firewise community that's organized in a non-HOA area. That means there are already some Firewise communities that have the advantage of having kind of established HOA assessment capability, but we've got the first one up there that's now in just kind of a group of neighbors getting together to do a Firewise community. and sharing that work with the rest of the Cobb area. We now have 5 other Firewise communities just starting to operate. So this is the mechanism by which you can start to organize your communities and, as I said, pivot from, yes, the great information that we've got here, but bringing it onto the ground. So I encourage everybody to look into that.
Thank you very much for all your hard work.
I have 2 quick questions. I'm a private landowner, but I'm also with the Bodega Land Trust. And we have quite a few properties out in western Sonoma County where we have forever wild easements that abut WUI type homeowner properties. And how aggressive do we need to be in managing ladder fuels along riparian areas? Because a lot of our easements are in riparian zones and they're forever wild, and they really aren't under current way the easements are written available to be treated for fire. So that's my first question. Should we be recommending and changing the way these easements look? And my second question is, when was the last time that the Freestone Valley Ford area burned, if anybody knows?
I don't have the last time Valley Ford Freestone burned. We could look into that for you. The riparian areas get touchy, as was talked about yesterday, in that we don't want to damage native salmonoids that are coming up and down that creek and or other endangered species. So it gets very tricky when it comes to modifying fuel within that riparian area. And for your peace of mind, normally the riparian area has a higher fuel moisture and humidity level than the surrounding areas. So while that may be a larger volume of fuel that's in there, normally it is less receptive to burning than other areas.
Even with a lot of laddering?
So I'm going to put my forester hat on here, and there's trade-offs, right, in managing landscapes. And I guess for those that do have sort of protectionary policies by a voluntary choice, you know, think about making sure you haven't hindered all the tools in the toolbox, because you don't know when you're going to need them. Those riparian zones, under the right conditions, will burn. And you know, then you can also really get off track and off target in terms of your ability to provide that shade and resources for that water system and that water and that community there. So I think you know, if you have the opportunity, reconsider what tools you have and what tools you've given up with your easements, and whether there's a little more opportunity to bring some of that back with some appropriate guidance and adaptive management, of course.
Mm-hmm. So there's no consensus yet on how to handle the areas, but you're saying just not to tie our hands with what the easements.
Well, it's hard to talk about it without actually being on the ground and looking at it. So, you know,
yeah.
I really like the ability to keep a management set of tools for all landscapes, because you never know when you're going to need them.
Thank you.
Department of Fish and Wildlife should be contacted. Sorry.
So I just wanted to note that there's been, and I'm just speaking from the Sierra Nevada, but there's been some research done on exactly those questions. And so the answers here were, the context is very, very, very important. But what Ben noted is you're very close to the coast here. There's a lot higher humidity. As you move inland, you start to encounter situations where those systems can periodically become quite dry. And in Southern California, it's not uncommon now for fires to burn right through riparian zones. And there are a couple of examples in the Sierra Nevada of fires where fuel treatments were not carried out because of riparian exclusion zones, and fires actually essentially wicked up those areas under really dry conditions and were able to bypass fuel treatments and enter areas of homes and other things. So, I mean, that's a kind of a worst case scenario. That's not always going to happen. But there's some work that's been done in the Sierra Nevada looking at fire history, and what it showed, and again, Sierra Nevada's drier than here, let's be honest, you know, but that the ability of a riparian zone to sort of be resistant, if you will, to fire is really dependent on how big the stream is, how incised the stream is, how wide the riparian buffer is, you know. So these guys, it's basically what they said. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. It depends on the context. But you're thinking the right things. Probably in most cases, you shouldn't be left simply alone. I guess we're here, I think.
Oh, can I begin by asking how much time we have for questions left?
So, you've got 22 seconds. This is your fifth question. I'm just kidding you, kind of. But we have about, it's like 8 minutes around.
Okay, well, what I'd like to suggest is that in the future we have poster sessions or something to separate the questions and the discussion periods from the speeches and the interaction is better taking place one-on-one. So I have two questions based on the experience of having done, our Fire Safe Council did a workshop on home hardening and home ignition zone, and there were two questions that came up that I could not answer. I live in a neighborhood that sounds like Caerleon's. We have an aging population and an aging home stock, and the first question is, I live in a house with shake siding. Is there something I can do to treat that, or do I have to replace the siding? And the second is, I live in an area where there's mixed hardwood forest, and there's significant amounts of leaf litter underneath it. In our area, the airborne won't let us burn those leaves. How do we get rid of the leaves, the receptive fuel bed underneath a mature hardwood forest?
All right, fun couple of questions. So redwood siding is difficult to do some post-treatment to it.
Cedar siding.
The cedar siding. There are products that you can buy that are actually treated before you install them, but you can't post-treat them. The siding is not the most vulnerable component of the home, but what is adjacent to that siding could be modified and adjusted, right? So we talked about that 0 to 5 non-combustible zone. Well, if you have combustible siding, then that's really an important quality to think about. It's all about gaps and joints and weaknesses. I mean, I love the aesthetic of the siding, and so, you know, the more gaps and joints you have, the more weak places that can get underneath. And it depends on how that house is sheathed. So you're going to want a panel product under that, and hopefully you do. Plywood would be preferable over some of the oriented strand boards or other types of materials that you might find. So I guess I would focus on your roof, I'd focus on your venting systems, and I'd focus on that vegetation separation.
So retrofitting is out of the question?
I think retrofitting is out of the question. You know, in siding, I really recommend folks think about it when it's the right time. And a lot of people want to do it because of the aesthetic change that it may bring. And so understand that you're doing it for the aesthetic reason, but make sure you're prioritizing the elements for fire that you can at that time. In regards to the ability to manage that fuel material, I think I need a little bit more visualization on what that is. I mean, you can chip, you can shred, you can compost, you can rake, you can leaf blow, you can do a lot of things. Maybe you and I should follow up afterwards because there's a lot of people behind you who would like to speak. Thank you.
Okay, back.
Yeah, I had a question. I really like that carrot stick slide, and I had a question about the carrots. Are there any grant programs or something to help landowners put in defensible space around their house, or maybe discounts or credits from the homeowner's insurance? And then my second question, just super quick, is what's the efficacy of rooftop sprinkler systems?
Grants are somewhat thin on the ground lately. There's some money flowing into the county disaster money. We're hoping to help out with some defensible space projects with that. Fire Safe Sonoma, we just put in a grant with the California Fire Safe Council, who have like $2 million for the state this year, or $4 million. So that's not really a lot of money for the whole state. So in my opinion, that's something that we really need, is more funding to do things like what you're talking about. With the caveat that your 100-foot defensible space, it is the responsibility of the homeowner. And I understand what a hardship it can be in some cases, but it is our responsibility as homeowners to do that. And if you start at the walls and do your 5 feet, then do your 10 feet, and move out as best you can, I highly recommend that you at least get started. Don't let the money stop you. It is your responsibility. Insurance company discounts, the only one that offers one is if you are a FireWise community. USAA will give you $50 a year.
CAL FIRE does have grant opportunities coming your way. There's multiple different grant programs that we have access now to through greenhouse gas reduction. There should be a fire prevention grant specifically for fire prevention type activities released within the next couple weeks. So Resources coming out, normally it's not for individual landowners, it's more of a community-based approach, but a possibility through a community program that you may try to get going. And then as far as sprinklers, I'm going to pass it to Yana, but just for the suppression side of the house, historically we have not found that that has contributed to a successful resolution for that structure individually, and it drains the water from the municipal water supply for the firefighting resources that are already stretched thin. So myself, I don't believe that that's a good system.
You also, on the funding source, might want to look at some of the federal resources under the Natural Resources Conservation Service. In some cases, some situations, depending on the size of the property, you can bundle some of those with your neighbors and successfully work through, putting some of those pieces together, and also enhancing other values on the property that are super important from a conservation perspective. I guess what I want to say is, there is no foolproof system. A cinder block house can burn, or the contents within a cinder block house can burn. You think that is, impenetrable, but you need the venting to be able to allow the moisture to get out, to make it a comfortable environment to get in. You have to design your house so that it can handle the situation on its own. And so the sprinkler system, while it's very innovative, and I think it sounds kind of cool, and it could be great to have some misting systems to go with that in the heat of the summer, you have to have all your systems functioning. Do you have electricity that's going to run the mechanisms to turn that on? Do you have a pump system that needs electricity? Is your water on gravity feed, or are you on municipal water? So if you're dependent upon a couple of systems working first to be able to maintain that water supply and maintain the electricity to make that work, or trigger the mechanism, that begins to get a little iffy. So you might want to think about what you can do and how you can help your home when you're not there.
Okay, we've got time for one more, and I think that's you.
Yeah.
So I was going to let some of the people know. They were asking about getting a hold of neighbors and stuff up on Bennett Ridge. Luckily, we have our own water company. So somebody in our group honestly took that data. It was one of the people who did not lose their homes up there. Took that data, put it together, and started a Google .com mail thing for just Bennett Ridge. And as we run into other neighbors, because we're spread all over the place, like she said, we've been passing it around, and I think we've pretty much caught up with everybody now in the last 6 months. And so our first get-together is on the 20th. We're just going to have a potluck and see who shows up, and then talk about a lot of this stuff. But that's kind of how we did it for us. And as far as sprinklers, I think where we are in the wild phase, we have to put a sprinkler system in. And how do you get the county?
Oh.
I mean, if they're not that functional, how can they make us put them in?
Yeah, explain the difference.
A couple different things. So I think it's great you're getting together. Just think about the collective healing that it's going to have everyone come together. You might also look at some of the social media sites and ways to pull people together through Facebook and other resources. I'm a Facebook Luddite, so I'm not very good at that side, but there are a lot of people that are available in that framework. Your second question was about sprinklers, and the standards do require them on the interior of the home. And so, kind of mixing and understanding what these different mechanisms are, how the house is, where it's situated, whether it's really deep in the wooey and it's off the grid and it's on its own, or whether you're in more of an urban core.
Well, interior sprinklers are wonderful. They absolutely will keep your house from burning down from the inside. And you're
Probably at greater risk for leaving the iron on one day than you are for the wildland fire, even though it doesn't seem like that now. But those having sprinklers in your house is a wonderful thing. Roof sprinklers are a different issue because of a variety of things, but be glad that we changed the code to require interior sprinklers.